At around 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 18-year-old Peyton S. Gendron arrived at a Tops supermarket on Jefferson Avenue in a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York. The boy was armed with a Bushmaster XM15 AR-15 style rifle, modified to accept high-capacity magazines and multiple 30-round ammunition magazines. In his car, he had a Savage Arms Axis XP hunting rifle and a Mossberg 500 shotgun. He was wearing body armor, a military helmet, and a head-mounted camera through which he live-streamed the attack on the online service Twitch. Gendron first shot 4 people in the parking lot, killing 3. He then entered the store, shooting 8 more people and killing 6. At 2:31 p.m., Buffalo police received a call reporting shots fired at the store. The first responding officers and firefighters arrived a minute later and reported bodies lying outside the building. At 2:34 p.m., a dispatcher started informing responding officers of an active shooter situation at the store. According to a law enforcement source, Gendron yelled racial slurs during the incident. Many employees and customers used the store's break room to hide from Gendron and barricaded the door with a heavy desk. At some point, an armed security guard, former Buffalo Police Department officer Aaron Salter Jr., shot at him. Due to Gendron's body armor, Salter's bullet did not stop him. Gendron returned fire at Salter, who died at the scene. At another point, he aimed his gun at a white person behind the checkout counter, but he apologized and did not shoot. By 2:36 p.m., Gendron had gone to the front of the building, where patrol officers were able to talk to him into dropping his gun after he reportedly aimed it at his neck. According to an article from USA Today, a total of 60 shots were fired during the shooting. After his arrest, investigators perused one of his online profiles, which contained a 180-page purported manifesto posted in tandem with the shooting. The author of the document, who claims to be Peyton Gendron, confesses to the attack and describes himself as a fascist and an anti-Semite. He also elaborates that he is an ethno-nationalist and a supporter of white supremacy. He voiced support for the far-right Great Replacement conspiracy theory in the context of a quote-unquote white genocide. This theory, also termed replacement theory, claims that the ethnic French and white European populations at large are being demographically and culturally replaced by non-white peoples through mass migration, demographic growth, and a drop in the birth rate of white Europeans. Coming to you from Rhode Island, this is Topic, an informational podcast. I'm your host, Owen Tierney.
And I'm your co-host, O'Malley Sherlock.
And our topic today is media coverage of violent extremism in the United States. Undoubtedly, this incident is utterly horrific, but its cause can be traced back to violent extremist groups online. This shooting was executed by a boy who ascribed himself to many such groups, harboring extreme ideologies. Any United States citizen is very familiar with the epidemic of recent mass shootings. In 2021, the most recent year for which complete data is available, 48,830 people died from gun-related injuries in the United States, according to the CDC. But what they might not immediately know is that many of these incidents are the result of poor mental health care and the rise of extremist philosophy inculcated by these online far-right groups. But let's slow down for a moment and define violent extremism. While there is no universally agreed definition, Living Safe Together, an organization held by the Australian government, defines violent extremism as a person or group who is willing to use violence or advocates the use of violence by others to achieve a political, ideological, or religious goal. Such individuals or groups are willing to employ violence or terrorist tactics to intimidate, coerce, or inflict harm on others who are perceived as opponents or enemies. Such a phenomenon can manifest in various forms, including terrorism, hate crimes, political violence, and armed conflict. Their actions may be driven by ideologies such as religious fanaticism, white supremacy, nationalism, separatism, or other extremist beliefs. It's important to note that not all forms of extremism involve violence, and violent extremism represents an extreme subset of broader extremist movements. However, the willingness to use violence distinguishes violent extremism from all other forms of extremist expression or activism. In her TED Talk on why young people join these extremist groups, Erin Marie Saltman attributes their attraction to various push and pull factors. Push factors, largely external, include alienation, isolation, and identity questions. Feeling that your in-group is under attack, like Gendron's belief in replacement theory, and believing that larger powers are not doing anything to stop what ails you. Pull factors are more intimate and internal, as extremist groups use empowerment and communal identity to establish a brotherhood, sisterhood, where in-groups harbor the only solution.
The minds of practitioners of extremist violence are highly complex, but are essentially the results of deeply rooted social issues that are not easily singled out. However, throughout the many news articles that are written about mass shootings, two common themes appear: white supremacy and inadequate gun laws. In February 2023, an article from Reuters News by Kanishka Singh stated that white supremacists committed 80% of all extremist-related murders. This data came from the Anti-Defamation League, which also provided that in 2022, all extremist killings were linked to right-wing extremism. The predominant reason behind the epidemic of mass shootings in the United States, according to media outlets, is poor gun laws. An article by AP News showcased 22 shootings over the past decade and how the shooters' guns were obtained. All of these 22 gunmen obtained their weapons quickly and cheaply, with barely any friction in the sales process. Frighteningly, all sales were entirely legal, despite the ease with which the gunmen obtained the assault weapons. Sisek, at length, emphasized that most of these extremists legally obtained their firearms at a very young age, many at just 18 years old. Even more concerning, several of the shooters had a history of mental health issues or threats of violence, but due to a lack of scrutiny in the sales process, were able to still buy and own guns. Given data from countless reputable organizations, there is reason to conclude that more scrutiny in gun sales may diminish the possibility of firearms being put into the wrong hands. While not the only solution, stricter gun laws and options for civilian reporting would help mitigate unreasonable sales. While the media fulfills a vital role in reporting on mass shootings, their reporting often influences a great deal of polarization and misattribution of cause. There are some negatives to this informational process. Articles that go into depth about the shooter's personal life and motive run the risk of isolating these groups and emboldening people who identify similarly as the shooter. For example, public knowledge of school shootings has led to the conception of a school shooter stereotype online. In a CNN article by Drew Griffin, it was reported that fellow students said, if there was someone to shoot up a school, it would be him. These claims were made about the Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz. In the case of Uvalde shooter Salvador Ramos, kids his age would refer to him as school shooter before the attack even happened. According to Condon on his PBS article about early warning signs, unfortunately, in their effort to be recognized and respected, shooters who happen to be a part of a minority group, like in the case of Ramos, or a heavily scrutinized group such as the LGBTQIA+ community, breed hate toward their respective identities and can increase political attention rather than dissolving them through violence. Interestingly, many of these articles that report on these shootings also discuss gun reform in the same article. Gun reform is a highly polarized topic in the United States, so its publication may come from a place of good intentions, but it runs the risk of heightening and emboldening harmful ideology, or ridiculing certain groups, as well as politicizing the tragic loss of their victims. The number of mass shootings has been increasing for the past 50 years, and they show no signs of stopping. Now more than ever, we need to take action in order to prevent the continued loss of life at the hands of extremists by funding mental health programs. Currently, the best perceived solution to this problem, by news outlets and politicians, is stricter gun control. Stricter gun control laws call for better and more in-depth background checks for all gun sales and banning or heavily regulating the sale of assault-style weapons. These weapons have the capacity to kill many people quickly and easily, so the regulation of them would ideally reduce the loss of life. On the other hand, critics of stricter gun control argue that it goes against the Second Amendment right to bear arms. Additionally, stricter gun control is not an effective strategy to combat mass shootings, as violent extremists will find ways to obtain guns illegally, leading to an illegal black market for firearms. Regardless of the politicians pass for strict gun control. Regardless of the policies politicians pass for strict gun control and protection of schools and other public places, they do not address the reason people become extremists in the first place. According to a Prevention Institute article on shooting prevention, almost all extremists have some form of mental illness, such as chronic depression, psychosis, or personality disorders. Their struggle with their mental health often leads to and worsens feelings of isolation that can push them to online extremist groups that offer them the promise of community and an explanation for their struggles. These online circles provide simplistic and distorted narratives that often shift the blame for their struggles to other groups of people through racist, sexist, religious, and political narratives. These groups become hive minds for hateful ideas that influence individuals like Grendon to commit horrible violence. To prevent this, the Prevention Institute believes that we need to establish better resources for mental health programs. Measures also should be taken to deter people from finding these communities in the first place. Educating parents and school staff about these websites and what warning signs to look for can help identify kids who are at risk of becoming radicalized and give them the help they need.
The domestic terrorist crisis in America continues to take the lives of many innocent Americans and will not stop unless we take preventative action and media companies remain culpable. Finding a solution to this complex problem is difficult, and it will take many years to reform the deep-rooted societal and legal issues that contribute to this crisis. While stricter gun control is an excellent first step to reducing the loss of life at the hands of extremist shooters, it is just as or more essential to find and fix what is driving these people to resort to violence in the first place. Factors such as white supremacy, increased feelings of isolation and mental health issues, and the increase of online hate groups all show how widespread yet misunderstood this issue truly is. This epidemic of mass shootings is uniquely an American problem, but the issue of violent extremism and its media coverage is universal. In the past 10 years, there have been 180 school shootings and 365 victims. And the number keeps on growing each year, as Christina Walker found in her CNN article. The only ones who are able to make a change are us. The only way we can get past this as a country is to be more understanding, tolerant, and willing to take action in order to save lives and hold our news outlets accountable for all of this. This has been Topic. Thank you for listening, and stay safe out there.